Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast. The P.A.S. Report provides an honest analysis on the critical issues that matter to you without the biased media filters. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I got a great episode lined up, but as always, make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and share this episode with your family and friends and on social media. Now, I hope you're having a good week. And before I jump into today's episode, on Monday I joined Trace Gallagher on Fox News at night. It was a good interview. I put the video up on YouTube and Rumble, so check it out. Also, I have a few speaking engagements coming up, so if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, I encourage you to do so because you get notified when I'm doing this public speaking event. The good news is with the newsletter, I don't spam. I don't bombard you with emails. I send out about one email per month, so it's a good idea. Now, we're living through a period that has the potential to reshape the world. Even more important is how it impacts our entire way of life, and yet so many are blind to the reality of the world we're living in. And I will admit, I'm fed up. I'm fed up with the incompetence of both political parties. I'm fed up with the incompetence in the White House. I'm fed up with the idiocy that we're witnessing on a daily basis. And I'm fed up with a number of Americans who have their heads buried in the sand, how they're clueless about how life is going to change. Yet these same people are going to be the first ones to bitch and complain when it all comes crashing down. I'm fed up how so many Americans know so little about our history, our government, the proper role of government, and their roles and responsibilities within the system. Then you have the leftists and how the leftists are destroying Western civilization because it's not just happening here in America. It's the entire Western world with the exception of a handful of countries. It's all self-inflicted wounds. We have a failed education system that continues to cycle students through. People know little about our government. They know little, but they think they know everything about all the issues. And even worse, they have this annoying entitlement mindset where they expect government to be there to fulfill their every need. They expect everyone to bow down to their viewpoint. And then you have the victimhood culture that we've created, where everyone's a victim, where we separate everyone into all these different groups and then pit the groups against one another. It's amazing. You have so many people in this country that want everything done for them. They want everything to be easy. They don't want to put in effort. They don't want to work hard. They don't have any grit. And it's pathetic. You look at our adversaries. You look at what they're doing. Now look at our generations. What happened in the United States? And I know I'm generalizing here, but it seems that so many people are devoid of using reason, logic, and common sense at this point. We need that right now. We are living through tumultuous times, and the question is, where do we go from here? The world is on the precipice, and life is going to dramatically change. I don't think that's sunken into people's head, and by the time it does, it will be too late. Are we going to allow the leftists to succeed in their attempt to destroy America and remake it under their vision? Re-engineer Western civilization? Are people going to wake up and put an end to this insanity? Because America's future is what's at stake. This is what I want to focus on in this episode. And I'm going to start off breaking down how the war in the Mideast is expanding, and a few things have gone under the radar that really point to something much bigger. There is a lot going on. And unfortunately, we have a pathetic media industrial complex that doesn't look at all these things. They try and separate issues out even though they may be interlocked. They just ignore major stories. But really, I think the most critical issue is the cultural rot we're seeing in America and throughout the Western world. And this cultural rot is occurring at the same time we may be on the brink of World War III. And it's not the war that's going to destroy us. That I could assure you. It's the cultural rot that will. You look at every single major empire that ever exists, and most of the time they died from within first before any type of war, before they started losing militarily. And there's an interesting point that I do want to make. And to all the losers out there, don't try and misconstrue what I'm saying. Don't try and take me out of context. Don't try and get your little 30-second sound clip. I know how the leftists love to do that. However, by the end of this episode, I'm going to explain how a world war may be the only thing that can actually save us from ourselves. Maybe rethink where we stand and what's going on in our lives, what's going on in our country. I'll explain it all when we get back from this quick break, so hang tight. When things go sideways, you want to be prepared. Protect you and your family. And people are concerned. They might have to go for a long time without food, electricity. That's why I want to introduce you to 4patriots.com. Get preparedness products you could use now, and that could save your life later. My favorite is 4Patriots' new solar generator, the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. It uses the endless free power of the sun to power your lights, your TV, medical equipment, even run your fridge. Plus, it's expandable and comes with a free solar panel. Or you can pick up one of 4Patriots' best-selling survival food kits. Delicious tasting and designed to last for 25 years. They even have kits with real meat. And if the power's out, no worries. Just boil water over a fire, simmer, and serve. You're going to enjoy a hot meal and stay safe in a crisis. More smart people than ever are finding 4Patriots. Over 2 million customers trust them, and you might have even seen them on TV. I had the folks at 4Patriots set up a special page for you at 4patriots.com/PAS so that listeners of this podcast can see this week's discounts and deals before they go away. Go to 4patriots.com/PAS, but you gotta hurry because the deals don't last long. So save more money, get peace of mind, and protect you and your family. Go to 4patriots.com/PAS. Welcome back, everyone. So there's a lot to unpack, a lot of developments that actually happened over the last few days. And when it comes to Israel's war against the savage terror organization Hamas, it's mind-boggling to see so many actively coming out to support this terror organization. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, I do have to put a disclaimer on this episode that everything is as of this recording. Obviously, this is a fast-moving situation. Things can change rapidly. So everything I say is as of this recording. The ground incursion into Gaza has started. It's not the full-scale invasion. It's a very slow-moving process, and I suspect that it's going to continue. We're seeing the troop buildup inside of Gaza. And we now have reports that Hamas is blocking foreign nationals from leaving Gaza. To me, why would any foreign national still be in Gaza in the first place? I don't know. But what I do know is that Hamas has literally zero regard for human life, and they will use foreign nationals as human shields. Remember, these people, they're not going to hesitate to use their own people as human shields, let alone foreign nationals. And it really shows you the cowards that they are. They use innocent people as shields so they won't be killed in war. These losers claim that they'll fight to the death. They claim that they want to be martyrs. Well, if they really wanted to fight to the death, if they really wanted to be martyrs, meet the Israeli military on the battlefield rather than hide behind women and children. But they can't do that. And the reason they can't do that is because they don't have the cojones. They're weak, they're cowards. And it shows you that they don't really want to die for their cause. It's a lie. It's a myth. These are pathetic barbarians who like to target innocent civilians and kill them in the most savage of ways. But when it comes going toe-to-toe with a real military, they hide. But you have morons around the world that want to glorify these losers. That's how pathetic people are in this day and age. But it's not just about Hamas. It's all the other actors involved in this conflict. I mean, if it was just about Hamas, Israel, they could significantly hurt Hamas as an organization. They could significantly disrupt their command and control and their operational capabilities. They can't destroy the ideology of Hamas. That has to come from within. That has to come from Palestinians themselves. And when are they going to rise up and take over and destroy Hamas? Because they need to realize that Hamas is responsible for their suffering. Hamas has hurt Palestinians more than any one country, and I've said that before. But when it comes to the other actors involved in this conflict, that's what you need to pay attention to, because that's where you see the theater of war expanding. We continue to see an increase in attacks coming from the north. Obviously, you have Hezbollah over in Lebanon that's ratcheting up attacks in recent days. They also warned that they're going to get more involved as Israel gets more entrenched in Gaza. So they're waiting for the bulk of Israeli forces to be in Gaza before they unleash their arsenal, and that's where we're going to see things really start to expand quickly. But we're also seeing attacks in the Golan Heights and Syria area. We have American military bases that are being targeted throughout the region by Iranian proxies. American military members are being injured, and we are now striking those Iranian proxies, and hopefully we continue to do so. I mean, I wish we had a strong president that would come out, speak publicly, and say, if you touch one hair on the head of Americans, we will destroy you. That's what the message that we need at this given moment. lobbing a few missiles, cruise missiles or Tomahawk missiles, yeah, that's good and all that we respond. But you need a forceful message to put the world on notice that Americans, if they are harmed, we are going to take action. Now, one of the more concerning aspects is a threat made by Turkish President Erdogan, who warned that they may declare war against Israel and send troops to Gaza. Erdogan, since he rose to power, he has become extraordinarily authoritarian. More importantly, he has become openly anti-Western. We see that on a daily basis. And of course, when he first came to power, you had the so-called foreign policy experts here in the United States praising him. He's a reformer. He's one of the more promising Democratic leaders. And like usual, they got it wrong. Like usual, they ignored the tea leaves. Can you imagine the failures of American foreign policy, the so-called foreign policy experts? How many times have they been wrong over the course of the last 30 years? They're constantly getting wrong. Erdogan is notorious for suppressing political dissent. He's notorious for curtailing Turkish people's freedoms, for cracking down on opposition voices, cracking down on a free press. And his government has significantly expanded its control over the government, exerted its influence, eroding the checks and balances that are crucial to Turkey to remain as a functioning democratic country. Now, these moves towards authoritarianism have raised serious concerns, and it raises concerns as far as Turkey's membership in NATO, the principles that are foundational to NATO. There is no denying that Erdogan is trying to push a geopolitical realignment towards China's sphere of influence. That's clear. And he stated this publicly. This adds a new layer of complexity to our relationship with Turkey, who we had a pretty damn good relationship with prior to Erdogan. Now, what's going on already had significant implications for NATO, especially the United States. However, what would a declaration of war with Israel actually mean? And where's the White House? Why hasn't anyone pushed back on Erdogan? I haven't heard a peep so far. Now, I'm sure they're utilizing diplomatic back channels to express our concern, our dismay, but that's not enough. We should be publicly calling him out. Unfortunately, we're in a weak position because we have feckless leadership here in the United States. That's the problem we're facing. And now we're in a box. We're in a bind, right? If we move to take action against Turkey, and when I say action, I'm not talking about military conflict. But if we move to take action against them, like suspending them from NATO, well, is it really going to hurt Turkey all that much? Or will it just push Turkey closer to China's sphere of influence? So this is a disaster for the United States. But again, what is our policy? What's our goals? You notice how we never have strategic objectives. We don't mention them anymore. It truly is amazing. Then you have the Secretary General of the United Nations. And when we look at the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who's openly blaming the Hamas attacks on Israel, saying that the attacks didn't happen in a vacuum and that it's Israel that essentially created the conditions that led to Hamas attacking innocent civilians. When we look at this, again, it's the bizarre mindset. Hamas killed over 1,400 innocent people, including 32 Americans, kidnapping nearly 300 people. These weren't people that were in the military. These were people that were just going on in their lives. The savagery of Hamas, it's amazing how people go out of their way to try and justify Hamas's actions and not fully condemn them. You have people talking about Israel being brought up on war crimes, Bibi Netanyahu being brought up on war crimes. Are you effing kidding me? But this is how dumb people have become. And people buy into this BS. And then you have something that totally went on under the radar. And I'll be honest with you, it's got me extremely concerned. I'm not sure if I'm making more of it than it really is. I'm not sure if it signals something much deeper than we realize at this point. But on Friday or Saturday, the Commerce Department came out. They issued a memo that they're suspending all firearm and ammunition exports to other countries for 90 days. Israel and Ukraine have an exemption, but no other countries do. Now, this is extraordinarily concerning. And the Commerce Department's reasoning behind this, according to them, was because they want to make sure that the munitions don't get into the hands of people that are abusing human rights. But none of that makes sense, right? We could have done this at any time if that was our real concern. To me, what's really going on out there? Are we now pulling back on our exports of firearms and ammunition because we're concerned that this thing is about to explode and we're going to need all the ammunition and firearms that we could get here in the United States to use it to send our young sons and daughters off to the theater of war. Something isn't right with the message. I spoke to a lot of people, and everyone I spoke to said they've never seen an order like this. Sure, we stop exports to certain countries for certain reasons, so we have country-specific policies when it comes to firearm and ammunition exports. But we never did a total 90-day ban to all countries with the exception of 2. There has to be something more at play here for us to do this. And I don't have the answers as to what it is, but it certainly is something that the press should be asking questions on, and it is something that we should be paying attention to. We already know that our stockpiles of military-grade weaponry have dwindled. We already know that we're below readiness levels across the board in literally every category. And so are we now concerned that war is afoot and therefore we have to begin to prepare? Maybe someone should ask the White House that. Maybe someone should ask the Commerce Department that. It would be nice if we get some clear answers. However, anything I say about this will just be speculation, so I'm not going to harp on it anymore. What I do want to harp on is the cultural rot that we're seeing throughout the United States, and I'm going to take up that when we get back from this quick break. Welcome back, everyone. So for years, I've been warning about the cultural rot here in the United States. I've been warning about how the leftists are trying to destroy American culture, American civilization, and Western civilization at that. And we're now seeing the results of that. We're seeing it in real time. We're seeing it on the streets of places like New York City and Chicago. We're seeing it on our college campuses, our education system overall. And it's a complete disaster of what the left has created in this country. I mean, they basically have radicalized a large portion of society where we now have polls, a Harvard-Harris poll, that shows 52% of Americans actually support Israel and 48% support Hamas, essentially. Okay, think about that logically. You actively have people supporting Hamas, and that's what years of a failed education system will produce. You have all these morons, the leftists out there, that have thrown their lot with a terrorist organization, Hamas, and that really is eye-opening. It's illuminating. Imagine supporting the idea of 1,400 innocent people getting slaughtered for no reason. If Hamas has grievances against the Israeli government, against the Israeli military, again, they should have the colonies take it up with them, but they won't do that. And it's not that these people are just saying that they care about Palestinians. I want to make that clear. You could care about the plight of the Palestinians and still criticize Hamas, but they won't criticize Hamas. In fact, they're celebrating Hamas. They're trying to elevate and normalize Hamas. Take a listen to this moron.
Similarly, I think, understanding Hamas, Hezbollah as social movements that are progressive, that are on the left, that are part of a global left, is extremely important. That does not stop us from being critical of certain dimensions of both movements. It doesn't stop those of us who are interested in nonviolent politics from raising the question of whether there are other options besides violence. So again, a critical, important engagement. I mean, I certainly think it should be entered into the conversation on the left. I similarly think boycotts and divestment procedures are, again, an essential component of any resistance movement.
She calls it a resistance movement. She tries to normalize Hamas and Hezbollah by calling them social organizations. She openly admits that they are part of the left now, that this is the new left in America. This is the new progressives in America. What happened to the Democrat Party? I simply don't understand it. And she's not the only one. Then you have other people coming out, and take a listen to this, Jem.
I do not now, nor will I ever, condemn Hamas. I unequivocally support the liberation movements of all oppressed people around the world by any means made necessary. If you have a problem with that, take it up with somebody else, because I don't.
So that's an avowed Marxist, and it's amazing how Marxism and Islamicism are coordinating and merging together. Truly amazing, truly astonishing. And it's also amazing how essentially these people are calling for a Holocaust, the second Holocaust, a genocide against Israel. They want to see Israel wiped off the map. And what do you think? That it just stops with Israel? Let's just say Israel was gone tomorrow. Does anyone really believe that this ends? Okay, and what's to say that they're not going to start fomenting that type of resistance by any means necessary, as she stated, here in the United States? Well, we've actually seen it at play. You know, it's funny because the FBI wants to sit there and they want to worry about parents. They want to worry about traditional Catholics, about anyone that supports the former president of the United States. Where you listen to the rhetoric of these people and it's actually horrifying what they're saying, what they're advocating for, and what they actually support. Then you have this person. Take a listen to this.
I'm from Socialist Revolution, just the U.S. section of the International Marxist Tendency. Well, we stand wholeheartedly with Palestine and the Palestinian people. We believe they have every right to resist. They're occupiers, they're colonizers.
What would be the solution to the conflict in Gaza?
Yeah. Okay. Well, from here in the U.S., our job is basically to overthrow the U.S. ruling class through a socialist revolution because they give tons of military aid to Israel, and that keeps Israel strong. And not just the U.S., right? Britain, Germany, France, right? So in the West, our job is basically to fight against our ruling classes and establish governments that are not helpful to Israel. Then in the middle,
so should we overthrow the Gazan government since it's Hamas?
Yes, we should.
What would you say for the people that come here that are pro-Hamas?
Yeah. I'd say that obviously I understand where they're coming from, right? The Palestinians are being brutalized so bad, and Hamas is right now the only person fighting, the only organization fighting back.
They want to kill all Jews. It's in their charter.
It was removed from their charter, but at one point, yes, it was.
I mean, they just did that the other day.
Yeah.
Another avowed Marxist, and actually another just plain and simple idiot that doesn't know his ass from his elbow. But when we look at this, unfortunately, this is a large segment of our society. Now, this is not the majority of Gen Z or millennials, but it's close to the majority. And that's what frightens me. I mean, these are the future leaders of the country. These are the future policymakers, the future lawyers and doctors and future business leaders. I mean, that's what's concerning, that these idiots are one day going to be running this country. Where do you think they're going to run it? Well, it's straight into the ground. Understand, there is a commonality between the three sound clips I played. It's far-left progressive ideology, and they're all white people. Privileged white people. That's what they are. Who live in the comforts of the United States, insulated in their own little bubbles, have no clue how the real world works. They should have to live in Gaza for the next 3 weeks. See if they like it then. Or better yet, once this is all over, when Hamas retakes control, if they do retake control of Gaza, which I do believe they will, they should have to live under Hamas rule. Or send them to another country where there's Sharia law. See how they like it then. They won't be able to survive because they're losers. That's what they are. There's no other way to explain them. Now, if World War III does kick off, I said at the beginning of this episode that may be the only thing that saves us from ourselves. And I know that sounds controversial, but it's not. When life is hard, when we face dark times and challenging times, maybe that will force us to reprioritize what's important in life. Maybe that will get us back to focusing on what really matters. Maybe that will get us back to appreciating the United States and everything the United States was built upon, reigniting the American spirit and prioritizing the American political philosophies. Maybe when we face dark times, it'll drive us more towards family once again. Rather than the destruction of the nuclear family, maybe we'll see the reemergence of the family. Maybe we'll see a revolution of faith here in the United States. Something to believe in, to give us a sense of purpose in life. Our current trajectory is one of doom, but it's not set in stone. Our destiny is in our own hands. We in the United States get to choose the path that we're going to take. And we've had it easy for far too long. I mean, I grew up during a great time. I mean, the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, with the exception, obviously, of September 11th, it was a great time. My generation hasn't had to really sacrifice anything for this country. And millennials and Gen Z, they've had a pretty good ride up until now, too. But that's all about to change. We're seeing the international instability increase. We're seeing the global economy decline. We're seeing our adversaries begin to apply more pressure, to expand their sphere of influence, to begin to push the boundaries. We see everything is gearing up for something big. And that something big is going to reshape how we live our lives going forward. We will have to make sacrifices. The luxuries we enjoy today will not be available if this powder keg explodes. We stand at a precipice. And what kind of nation do we want to be going forward? It's time that we reassess what's important in life. It's time we reprioritize what matters most. If we want to survive, if Western civilization wants to survive, we need to wake up. Now, if you found the content of this episode informative, please leave the P.A.S. Report a 5-star rating. Take 30 seconds to write a review. Don't forget to visit the P.A.S. Report website, PASreport.com. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I'll be back on Monday with another great episode of the P.A.S. Report podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast.
Have a good one. Bye.
Be sure to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Also, visit PASreport.com and follow us on Twitter at PAS Report.